Yeah, yeah. And so you raised a funny is so when several rounds of fighting about the K through 6 social studies curriculum here in Alberta ago, um, the the big the big objection from the teacher union was that expecting kindergartners to know the extent of the Roman Empire was not age appropriate. So you reminded me of this when you were
Well,
talking
I
about
just
the
don't know what
functional.
type of kindergartens you were raising up there, but
Well, and I happened to have a kindergartner at the time, and I turned to her and said, "Hey, redacted, um, what roughly? Where was the Roman Empire?" And she was going through this thing at the time where she had Egypt and Ireland confused, so she got those. She
transposed,
said
yeah.
Ireland and meant Egypt, but other than that, she basically nailed it, right? Like, and um, and not only do kids do fine with that kind of, and there's fun. You, anything you repeat enough, they can learn, right? Like, they can memorize things so much better than
Oh,
we give them credit for.
it's why they can pick
Um,
up a secondary third languages so much
yeah,
easier. Yeah.
yeah. The approach that and so here's a tip. Um, if 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 you're sending your kid to a regular school, it is very likely that they are obsessed with what, at least here in Canada, is called the expanding horizons approach to social studies, which is just that you should start with things most familiar to the kids and work your way backwards to the things least familiar um, to the kids. But so what that would mean is if you were going to teach, if you're going to teach uh, a kid in Alberta about uh, French culture, then the order you would do that in is basically just introducing them the concept of, hey, there are people in your neighborhood that are different from you. Then you'll talk about Francophone Albertans specifically, and then you'll talk about the Quebecois, and then the modern Quebecois, and then you'll talk about the exploration and settlement of Canada, and then you'll talk about World War I and World War II, and the French as an ally in that context, and then you'll talk about um, the then you'll talk about Napoleon, then you'll talk about the French Revolution, then you'll talk about France in the Middle Ages, then you'll talk about Charlemagne, and then you'll talk about the Roman and Greek empires, right? And so you may have noticed that's backwards. That's completely and totally. So what you could do is you talk about the Greek and Roman empires first, and from that you build on Charlemagne, trying to sort of restore the Roman Empire, and you have a way of understanding Charlemagne that you can't if you didn't start with the Roman Empire. And then by the way, that means when you get to the things most familiar to the child, then they have a way of understanding their place in history
Yeah.
that they can't have had
Yeah.
without understanding. And it's interesting to me that for all the things they do wrong, the Quebecois themselves do not teach about the Quebecois in that order. They want, by the time they get to themselves, they want the children to understand that they are the heirs of a great and mighty civilization, that they're coming at the end of it. So they do start from the Roman Empire and work their way forward in order until they get to the modern Quebecois. And it's
Boy, could you imagine
so
trying to teach
because,
church history that way?
oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
It's like, So, all right, we're going to start with Joel Osteen and work our way backwards. It's like, oh, good, shoot me now. But but yeah, no, it's insane. And by the way, um, I I occasionally encounter Christians who think that we can't teach history this way with this content rich, um, sequential, starting with the things least familiar to kids. And I go, huh, that's fascinating. When you teach the Bible, where do you start?
Mm-hmm. Well, John 1:1.
Maybe some people do. I don't think most Christian elementary school teachers start with John 1:1. What they usually
in the original Greek. Yeah. Oh no.
What they usually start with is Genesis.
Yeah.
They're starting with the thing most distant, least familiar, and most foundational to everything else they're going to teach. And then they
because why does John 1 start with Genesis 1? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then they work their way forward in a content rich way. And it's like, oh yeah, you already know that this is how you teach the Bible. And if you taught the Bible in this newfangled way that you're trying to teach secular history, if you taught the Bible in that way, your school would not exist,
wow,
right?
Man.
Like no one would send their kid, like because they're sending their kids for the Christian content, and they would not be sending their kids to your school if you were teaching the Bible in the same way you insist you have to teach history.
Great. You lose so much context that way. Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, and you lose an actual rich and real understanding of the things most familiar to you, right? Like, and so not only can kids handle the content, but have you talked to a kid? What do they like? They like talking about the exotic stuff.
Yeah.
They like knights and castles is one of the most common ones, right? Like, is they're gonna go to knights and castles. They're gonna go. They're gonna go. They like learning about the Roman Empire.
Yeah. How about dinosaurs? Right. So there's you, and then there's oil, and then the oil was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if we taught about dinosaurs that way? Good grief.
And then millions of years, nothing happened.
Yeah. Okay. So you're familiar with a sparrow. Okay, we're going to work backwards. Oh, yeah.
This is why dads need to be involved in education.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, exactly. I do think that's another example of something that's kind of gone sideways in the teaching profession. That just if more dads were involved, just would never have been allowed to get there.
Yeah. Well, think about like our heroes, right? So women's heroes are how can I see myself in the role? So it's me centered and outward. Not always, and it's not always the most negative approach that you can possibly take. But if Star Wars Acolyte has taught us anything, it's media is dead, and we should bury it. But what do men aspire to? Men aspire to be Superman. Oh, you see yourself as a maximum strength, flying, Kansas born and bred city boy or country boy who always does the right thing. And he goes, no, but I want to be like him. So it's always that projection forward and out. And King Arthur. Why do we like the Camelot story? We see the tragic downfall, but it's like, no, there was someone with an ideal, and we can aspire to the ideals, and we realize that Lancelot and having a best friend is not always a good thing.